currently sat in the garden for no particular reason. I didn't just happen to fall down here during the course of drinking copious amounts of tea, but noticed that a tiny little bit of flower, lovely to see in the depths of winter. The rest of the garden isn't looking anywhere near as good as it did during one particular clip in this video. This is the second part of my look back at those more favourite moments from the ramblings of an entomologist channel during the course of 2024, a year which didn't seem to produce much, and yet it did, surprisingly, when I look back. And among a range of species, there were some nice times, some nice moments, and that's what this video is again made up of. How long it lasts, I haven't a clue, because I haven't put all the clips together yet, so you'll have to bear with me. Probably make yourself a nice flask of tea or a flask of your favourite beverage. Mine, of course, is tea, and that's probably what I'm going to have, with some ice in it. You hear of success stories, but you tend not to hear about success stories in this modern age, although there are plenty of success stories in the insect world. Many insects and invertebrates are benefiting through changes to our climate. This butterfly, however, has benefited from a different source. Benefited from the hands of man, of all things. There's something that frequents this forest track that likes the beetles, and I'm not talking the Fab Four here from the 1960s. I'm talking the Coleopterous beetles, and one species in particular seems to be the favoured diet of whoever left this. It's quite amazing what you find in a pellet. But I can tell you that there are at least 3 species of Carabidae in here. This bronze part of an elytra is the elytra of Carabus nemoralis. There's a bit more of it just there, but there's also that bit there. That's part of the elytra of Carabus violaceus. And here, this looks like part or the remains of Pterosticus madidus. And then, of course, there's obvious bits of woodland door beetle. An Uplotrupes stercorarius, if I remember right, or words to that effect. They're usually the brighter metallic ones. That's another carabid elytra. But it's amazing what's in here. It's almost like an entomological jigsaw, this. You could have hours and hours of endless fun putting this together. It's just amazing on a partially sunny day like today, lots of cumulus cloud or fog in other parts of the country that has lifted up again into low cloud, and that is breaking and it's allowing some glimpses of blue sky and sunshine. You only have to turn your back for a minute sometimes, then turn around again, and the whole lighting has changed. The sun has come out and just lit up the trees. There's a silver birch just through there that's absolutely beautifully golden. Every leaf looks the same shade of gold. It looks fabulous. Not just the lighting on the trees, the lighting on the floor. Look how that changes too. It really is a fabulous time of year. It can be quite melancholy, I can understand that. the end of another summer, but you would hardly remember the summer that we've had, or the spring that preceded it. Look at the leaves, how they come down, sweet chestnut leaves. It looks magical. If you wander around the edge of any cornfields or arable fields, and there are areas of bare soil where it's been left uncultivated, even after the harvest has been collected in, chances are you might find both of these. You might find numbers of recently hatched 7-spot ladybirds, Coccinella septempunctata, wandering around looking for aphids. The other little beauty that you might see is the beautiful red flower of scarlet pimpernel, Anagallis arvensis, if I remember right. It's an absolute beauty of a flower. Just look at the simplicity of that. And in a cornfield setting like this, it really does look at its best. And it can survive in the driest and seemingly harshest of environments. It doesn't need much, does this little plant, but it does bring joy every time I see it. At least I love it. I think it's a beautiful little flower, and the colour of the petals is quite unusual from what I've seen of both Nottinghamshire and UK flora. It's a beautiful little thing. Just look at this for an absolute beauty. This is a privet moth, of course. It's about to go, but this is a very much a success story in Nottinghamshire in the last 20 years. At one time it really was a gross rarity, but then it started to spread in and started to occur in the southeast of the county, and over the years, each year that range extended a little bit further north and a little bit further west, and eventually it reached us in the Mansfield and Market Warsop areas. Fabulous success story from our largest moth. What an absolute beauty. Sometimes you don't get the impression of a moth's size until you see it like this on someone's hand, and now she's decided to stop and show herself in all her glory. I thought she was warming up to go up and off, but I'm glad that she hasn't. What a thing. And there's that wood pigeon's song again. Like a poor man's nightingale, really. And the sun is back out. Having such a range of flowers, and all of them are nectar bearing flowers. The bumblebees are especially attracted to the beautiful blue of the Viper's buglus. I've got 4 plants of that this year. It does get quite large, but it's a fabulous thing, and the bees absolutely love it. It's mostly bumblebees I get here, not too many honeybees. Don't think there's that many hives locally, but it serves a purpose. It's a fabulous plant. I would certainly have it in any garden, and I would recommend it to people to plant. Easily available at many wildflower sellers. But it's not only beautiful and an attractant for honeybees and for bumblebees, it's just a super plant to have. It's quite an unusual blue, really. I've got darker blue represented by the lobelia in the bottom left of your picture, and lobelia is quite a good plant. The bumblebees will visit that. Quite often they'll favour a plant that is in full flower. Once that's gone, they'll find something else to occupy the time. But I've not spent as much time as I ought to have done, and I wish I'd have done, in the garden this year. There's lots of solitary bees that I obviously miss by not spending so much time out, and I really need to get into that habit again of coming out here, having a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and sitting and watching and looking. Well, what about this then? Your picture is actually in colour, it's not black and white, it's just that we've had a nice covering of snow for once, and very unusually in this modern day and age. Good 4 to 5 inches of snow where I live at home, and that is about 10 miles away from Eakring here, where I've come just on the off chance that there may be some migration. We're not talking red admirals, by the way. You're looking at what I would class as a little marvel of nature, a wonderful piece of construction of what you could call a gilded cage. This gilded cage was created by the larva of a weevil. The weevil in particular here is Hypera conmaculata, a quite attractive weevil, nothing particularly colourful about it, but attractive nonetheless. This particular species creates this beautiful, almost gilded cage of a golden silken thread in which to pupate, because this is the cocoon spun by the larva prior to pupation, and you can see the pupa inside this protective gilded cage. And this is it. Surprisingly, this spider doesn't seem to have a retreat. The web is very low to the ground. It's a large orb web, but spun in between the stems in an available space. And I thought there may well be a bell-like retreat. There is a little hint of one, but this spider has come out from the centre of the web and gone up and is now just sat here on the grasses. And what a thing it is! I can't believe, quite frankly, that I'm looking at one of these, and in Nottinghamshire. One time I considered going down south and hunting them out down there. Now I don't need to. I think this spider, or this species, has been in Nottinghamshire for probably a decade. I wouldn't be at all surprised. But it is elusive, despite being large. It's as large, if not larger, than any garden spider you'll see. The abdomen is a different shape, but despite being such a large spider, and the fact that it makes its webs low down, almost out of sight, it's possible and very easy, I think, to walk past this spider and not know that it's here. Quite a brilliant thing, which I'm very pleased they took the trouble to dig out. It's just a shame that it was such a waste of time. And the reason why it was a waste of time is because back in the days when this was chiselled out of the sandstone rock, it was the days of horses and carriages. That was the only way the posh people from the park, just at the back of Camera, the posh bit of Nottingham, could access the town. Brilliant theory. Brilliantly thought out, but lacking in one aspect, and that was with regards to the incline. The incline is steep, too steep for horses to pull a carriage. Whoops! Still, it's left us with this, and here we are. Clifton Nonpareil at Eakring. What a moth. This beautiful field, one of 3 just outside the village of Eakring here in Nottinghamshire, is missing something critical. Something both visual and audible. Pollinators. This field is minus the buzz of the bees and the flies. The amount of insects here, and pollinators especially, is minimal. There's virtually none. There are a few honeybees here, and they're local from hives in the village. But bumblebees, I've seen 3 since I've been here. It's very worrying, and I'm not making this a scaremongering video. I'm just stating the fact here that numbers of insects are down considerably. And yet bumblebees, they seem to have had a great winter a couple of months ago. I saw lots of new queens in the spring, queens which I'd hoped were going to go on and found new colonies, but the success rate of those founding colonies seems to have been minimal. And to be honest, it's been several weeks since I saw the first Bombus terrestris workers. The only bumblebees I'm seeing at the moment are the likes of the white-tailed bumblebees, Bombus autorum and Bombus lucorum. Even the common cardabee, the brown bumblebee that most people will be familiar with, Bombus pascuorum, I've only seen odd workers of that. And it's not so much the wet winter that's been the biggest problem that insects have faced. It's the wet and cool spring. No dry period in spring, and it's that's really done for the lack of invertebrates. I don't intend to make a repeat of what has been the most successful and most watched video on this channel this year. But I think it's important to just highlight a species, to keep a species in people's minds, and one of this channel's aims is to show people what species are about, what's happening in the natural world, at least here in this part of Nottinghamshire, and the emphasis of course is on invertebrates. Mites are arachnids, and these tiny mites, and they are full size, even though that full size is considerably less than a millimetre, 0.5 millimetre at most. But this is just a fraction of the many thousands and thousands of these mites that are on this particular bush. And there's lots of webbing in certain areas. The whole bush isn't webbed over. I doubt whether I'll see that again for many years, and I will be going back to Clumber Park to check on that bush next year. Here at Sherwood Heath, I have enough tetrantius mites to keep me happy. Many of you, especially those that are of a certain age and of the male sex, will immediately know what I'm going to talk about, because this is a plant that certainly brings back those childhood days, and there's nothing wrong with reminiscing and thinking back. It's nice when you can think back, when you still are here to think back. But you're probably wondering, why would a grass ever provide and instill such a memory? Well, we used to throw these. This is wall barley, I believe it's called. But we used to pick these whenever we saw them on the way home from school, because this plant would grow up against a wall or at the bottom of a lamp post or telegraph post. Anywhere where it could get a hold of, this grass would grow. And these we used to take off, and we used to throw them at people. There was nothing dangerous in it. We didn't need health and safety to come round, and it was just pure childhood fun. Still is, although it's a lot more fun if you've got somebody with a sort of thick Aran jumper on to throw them at, because this would stick, and sometimes you'd gang up on somebody that was walking home, some poor unsuspecting child that had got a thick woolly jumper on. And you'd throw loads and loads of these at him. Say, no harm was done. Child wasn't traumatised. We didn't get traumatised in them days. But, I mean, you could even break them up into smaller bits. So from out of one seed head, you could add 3, 4 or 5 or 6 if you was particularly dexterous and dainty. Little arrows that when you threw them, they stuck to the victim's jumper. You never see kids do it nowadays. They throw things like bricks rather than grass. Pure, harmless childhood fun, all contained in a grass. I didn't plan or expect to still be watching this as we approach midnight. Warsop is still, but the sky isn't. Redness has faded a little bit. Jupiter is still shining brightly, but through beautifully red aurora. It's absolutely mesmerising. These are the things that I like to see, I like to witness, because I know very few people are witnessing it. No one in this immediate vicinity is out and looking at it. It really is a wonder of nature. And now there's a good area of green aurora just south of one large red area of sky. It looks like this main sort of belt of aurora is heading south. Another chance that people in the UK have had to see this fabulous spectacle. Absolutely wonderful. I've had a lifelong fascination with these ever since I can remember. Always held a fascination for ants. Various attempts at keeping ants ever since childhood. Not the easiest of things in some instances to identify either. And I found a species the other day that falls into the some instances category. The ones I've found are probably some of the hardest to identify. And I'll try and explain that as I go through this video. This is a very different video. There'll be shots like this with me rattling on, then there'll be shots of the ants with me rattling on again. In the end of this video, there will be no definitive answer, because this is very much a sort of work in progress video. And that work in progress involves trying to identify a species of ant that I recently found at a local garden centre. All I know is that it's certainly a new species for Nottinghamshire, and it's a good one nationally. How good? I don't know yet. I need an expert. we had a glimpse. They are shy, but they seem curious at the same time. They like to see what's going off. They will retreat, but here he comes. Look, they can't resist coming and having a look. Aren't they just delightful? And this is Cercis rabiensis. I fear that this one will gain confidence and spring to the air. But what characters these are. They don't sting, so you've no need to be afraid of them. What beautiful little things. Almost like got a smiley face. In a way, I suppose they're quite emoji-like. Well, that's all cheered me up today. I thought I'll have a wander up Clipson Old Quarter to check up on this caterpillar. I expected it to be gone, but permanently gone by whatever means or by whatever forces, but thankfully that force was its own steam. I couldn't believe it when I found it sat hunched up on the branch, and now it's here, and I think that's where it's going to pupate. Of all the nice areas we have in Sherwood Forest, this is one of the best that you could walk along. It's been opened up a little bit in the last few years and it's made it better. It did become quite dark and the canopy was closed. It's in danger of becoming closed again, but at the moment, walking up, if you can make the effort to walk up from the major oak up as far as the centre tree, you're faced with this, and it's a beautiful walk. It's a nice, quite long, straight, flat walk. You can walk down and come back another way, but it's absolutely glorious. And I must admit that since retiring, I've learnt to love this walk in particular. Can't believe that I'm looking at one of these again. Lots of effort is required. It's like when you see rare species on the television that have been filmed. The amount of effort and time and man hours that go into just producing the briefest bit of footage on occasions is unbelievable and isn't appreciated. And yet I can see now that this is eating some small fly. There you can see this spider absolutely perfectly. There are 3 species, as far as I'm aware, of Thanatus in the UK, 2 of which are native, and I'm probably one of the few people that have seen all 3. Even the non-native one, which occasionally turns up in tubs of crickets or locusts for supply to the reptile and tarantula trade. And the other, Thanatus, which I think might be vulgaris, I'm not sure, I'm not entirely sure offhand, is also found here at Clumber and in a couple of other heathland sites in Nottinghamshire. You'll be surprised at the number of different species of butterfly that gets to the tops of the trees or flies over them. Not everything flying around the top of an oak tree is a purple emperor. And while I've been stood here, I've had red admiral, large white, there's a purple hairstreak knocking around, but also speckled wood and ringlet. You'd be surprised just how sort of almost airborne some butterflies get. But in order to get from one sort of feeding or breeding area to another, butterflies quite often have to go up and over. But red admirals, you'll see them regularly over treetops. No purple emperors as yet. Just trying to give you an inkling as to how things are. Lots and lots of water boatmen. They're still coming in. You can see a lot of them there. Masses of beetles. Beetles of all shapes and sizes, to be honest. And caddisflies too. Well, I've just started my progress up section M and stumbled across an orgy, as you do. I believe there's actually 3 males with this female, which in glowworm terms and frequency over the years isn't particularly unusual. She's right at the edge of the path. There's a male more or less underneath her, one on top of her, and one trying to get into the action on the side, looking away from us as we look now, the one that's moving. So we're definitely at peak numbers. Autumn's very different. It's a time of reflection, really, and I often reflect in autumn. Reflect back to my childhood, those days when I would kick leaves like this, but I would be a lot younger than I am now. And if you deliberately went into a pile of leaves quite often, your mother would tell you off for ruining your school shoes. You need them the next day for school. Still, they were fun days. They were innocent days. That's what life takes from you. It takes all the innocence you ever had as a child. But it's still lovely to look back on a beautiful autumn day. An old saying that a watched kettle never boils is proving true. This one's taken an age, but it was nice to look back on a number of clips from 2024, a year which was actually better than what I'd imagined, or at least remembered it as being. And he's looking forward to 2025. What will it bring? Only a few more days away. Hopefully this kettle may boil before 2025 arrives. In the meantime, I have a cup of tea that I prepared earlier. Quite nice is that brew. I might have another in a bit to celebrate 2024 and to herald in 2025 and another year of ramblings of an entomologist. I'd love to know who this entomologist bloke is. But in the meantime, cheers and all the best to you all for 2025. It is quite nice, that. I think I'll have another one in a minute.